Hey, Internet. It's me, friendly local neighborhood nautical cartoonist Lucy Bellwood. And I thought I would do a little live stream of the remaining inking that I'm doing on the cover for my upcoming book, Baggywrinkles, A Lubber's Guide to Life at Sea, which hits Kickstarter on July 20th. So this is my first time using Google Hangouts to do screen sharing stuff. Bear with me while I learn how to make this work. But yeah, there's a questions box. You guys can chat away or ask some questions if you're interested. Local neighborhood nautical cartoonist Lucy Bellwood, and I thought I would do a little live. All right, so we're going to set up this, and theoretically, you guys should all be able to see my screen now, and take a look at that. And I'm going to invite. Just put that link up on Twitter so everybody knows where to go. The bummer about using Hangouts on Air is that you can't play music that you don't own the rights to, which means that you're just going to have to listen to me natter to myself / breathe heavily into the microphone, but we will make it work. This may create some sort of terrible recursive window when I try to invite myself to my own broadcast, but we'll find out if that works for public people to look at. Ah, yeah, okay, cool, that link works. So that's up on Twitter now. Tell your friends. And here we go. I'm just gonna keep doing whatever I've been doing in Manga Studio. A really cool thing that I've been playing with this time around is just copy pasting rope rather than having to draw all of it like we did in the Baggywrinkles. There's a lot of rope in boat comics, it turns out. And you know, I still like drawing things by hand a lot. You can see I did a bunch of it. I did a live cast on Periscope recently, showing all of this inking of original elements for the end papers in the books. Like you can see I did the logo for the cover and myself, the picture that's going to appear on there, by hand, just because I have a little bit more line confidence with it. But I think for doing stuff where you've got to do super hefty quantities of rigging, it's just not worth it. Life is too short. Manga Studio lets you draw lines really quickly and easily, which is super nice. So it's much better. Oh, look, Aaron Myers is here. Hey, Aaron Myers, what's up? So, like, for example, that's the mast. Let's take one of these beefier lines. You can see all the rungs of this rope ladder that I copied because I'm a cheater. No, that's not true. Using digital tools to do your work is not cheating. It's being efficient. Hey, Matt, what's up?
Oh, hey.
Whoa, you can talk to me. That's exciting.
I thought this would be more of a what do I want to say? A broadcast.
Yeah, not a public exhibition. I don't know how to turn off. I haven't used this program before, so like I don't know how to turn off the letting other people talk to you method. Like we're getting a nice view of Aaron's ceiling over here. I don't know if you guys are down to sit here and talk to me about comics. That's awesome. It's gonna make my life easier and kill the deafening silence left by not being able to use music in the background of the Google Hangout.
I'm more wondering, given the time of night, if someone might log on and be like, video's on, underwear.
This did happen when I was running my Periscope broadcast the other day. There were a bunch of people over at my house. Just, you know, it was super hot in Portland. Everyone was hanging out in their underwear, and they came in and were like, "Who are you talking to?" And I said, "Oh, the internet." What, the whole internet? And I was like, "Well, yeah, like 20 of them." Not the whole thing. They can't see the underwear. It's fine. This is pointed at my table. It's okay. Is it like mandatory that you have to start? Oh, am I not even? Are you guys not even looking at my screen? Now you're looking at my screen. Shoot. See,
I actually can only see your screen.
you can only see my screen. That's fine. I think the way that it's set up, I can't toggle back and forth. Like I should be able to click on my face and have it switch back and forth when I speak, but it doesn't seem to work that way. I'm not really sure why. Oh wait, if I open Cameraman, there's all these different apps. Okay, as guests join, hide their audio and video from my broadcast. So I think that's the thing that stops me from being able to talk to you. Broadcast the large video that I see in my audience and hide the other video feeds. New guests in my large, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Ugh, this is extra awkward because it's live and then it's being recorded, you know, and everyone's going to look at it. And okay, stop presenting versus stop screen sharing. I see. All right. Yeah, I'm not really sure how to like turn this off and on so that people can and can't see the screen share. So like if I hit stop, then you get to see me.
Yes.
And I look like this, but I can't make it like normally what it'll do is switch back and forth. Oh wait, I wonder. Yeah, no, I got nothing. You can say, yeah, I think I'm just gonna set it up to show my screen and that'll probably be it.
That's really what I came in for anyway.
Yeah, exactly. You're not here to see like the top of my head while I look down at my Cintiq.
Unless it looks like the studio's empty. If Erica was going to be pulling antics in the background, then I'd be like,
yeah, you want me to angle my camera. No, Tally and Ben are here. But Tally's got her headphones on listening to Girl Talk, so she warned us that we might hear her rapping in the background. And Ben is cranking away on Autumn Lands in the back room. So there's lots of that going on. But I asked them if they would be okay with me yakking to myself on the internet, and that is what I'm doing. I guess it's a Saturday night. Like, I don't really know who else is hanging out doing work, but I'm trying to get better about doing more live broadcast stuff because people seem to like it. It's a nice option.
Totally and utterly shocked that my phone streams video better than my computer seems to.
Can you switch back and forth between the two? Like, are you toggling between, or are you doing it off your phone right now?
Oh no, this is on my phone at the moment.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense that it's portrait moded. So I think it's like a grand mystery that we do both live in Portland and know a lot of the same people, but have never actually hung out in the real world. Is that right?
Oh no, I no longer live in Portland. It's
okay.
It's 2009.
That explains a lot. I was like, it seems really bad because like Erica knows you, a bunch of people know you. Like, it seems weird to me that we know together, but
I was her roommate for 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ran fleeing from the city because it ate me alive.
It's so funny that you say that. I was just saying to somebody the other day that I feel like, unlike New York, where you know the city is referred to as like an entity that is out to get you, where you have to hit your wits against the city of New York, you know, and are you going to make it and all the rest of it. And Portland is like, Portland, the city as an entity, I don't conceptualize as having that kind of man-eating tendency. It's not to mean that, you know, things can't go south while you live here. Because they do for, you know, have done for friends of mine. But yeah, I guess I don't conceptualize it as being that sort of like crazy giant business environment that's liable to kill people.
What's ironic is where I ran to was New York.
Are you still there?
No, but I had much better success in New York than I ever did in Portland. I thought much the way that you might think, that if I've had success in New York, moving to Portland's going to be a cinch.
If I can make it here, I'll make it anywhere.
And that turned out not to be the case at all.
Damn. Just goes to show, you think you got it figured out, and it turns out. Fucking wood grain.
Huh. I actually had no idea a lot of your inking was digital.
A lot of it isn't. Like most of what I do, like all of the longer comics that I'm doing, like Baggywrinkles issue 6 and my previous stories, they're mostly penciled on the computer and then inked by hand. So like earlier in the broadcast, I was holding up the elements that I was working on for the end papers for the book, which are like, you know, big 11 by 17 pages. And that was what I was live casting on Periscope last week when I was trying to figure out how to use that to live cast stuff. And I don't know, I just have more facility with a physical, you know, brush pen. I'm not as good at digital inking. But for something like this cover design where things have been changing so frequently, like let's see, I can show you. I did a little mock-up for my patrons this past week of just, and then like between the time that I made the mock-up and the Patreon update going live, there were 5 more edits to the cover that happened. I was like, oh my God, there's nothing, I cannot win doing this. But I've been working with
that on Twitter a few times. What's prompted the edits? Is it you know, trying to fit in necessary cover elements, or is there an editor who's saying like, you know, the design should be different?
It's mostly so I'm putting out the book myself, but I've hired Allison Haller, who designed Ojoy Sex Toy and Bucko for Erica, and she works at Dark Horse. And I have nothing but good things to say about her. She's been a godsend. Because like I know how to do this stuff, you know, I have a passable familiarity with InDesign, but it's just so much nicer to, you know, work with a professional and pay them to do their job and then just not worry about it. So like you can see this is some of the mock-up stuff. It's I think in process a lot, so it a lot of it has just been like, oh, okay, well here's a shitty little thumbnail just to get things rolling, and then here's a rough idea of what I want the cover to look like, and everyone I showed it to was like, more boats. You need to actually be on a boat. Why are you not on a boat? And I'm like, I put a bunch of nautical shit in there. Does that not matter? Apparently no. So we actually yoinked this panel from my first guest comic for Erica and dropped it in, and Emmy Guinness, who's a former Periscope intern who was visiting, was like, yeah, that honestly, that panel, even though it's in a comic about sex stuff, is kind of the epitome of your brand. Like, you're enthusiastic, you're on a boat, it all works together. And Allie got back to me with a bunch of different design ideas, but this one actually stood out. She did a great job working with the vignette image, but then was like, crazy thought here, what if it was full page? And we just had like a giant illustration. And I actually really liked that. So that was when I came in and kind of roughed up what it would look like to do that and threw some color on it. And then my computer crashed and I lost that file. So I basically just took that screen grab and have been inking over that. So you can see in this image, we've got like, I'm in here, and I had to go in and...
Oh, that's much better, having the 2 crossbars and having some sail in with it.
Yeah, totally. Rather than just the rigging, like I'm super into this. I still haven't decided what the logo treatment is going to be.
Kind of cropped, the way that a lot of children's books do.
Yeah, totally. So there's a little bit more stuff, but like there'll be a scroll down here, and I'll have my name on it. My only concern really is making sure that the scroll fits in such a way that it's not super distracting on top of all of the rigging, you know? So that's why it's good to ink stuff digitally, right? For a project like this where things are changing all the time. I'm just super aware of wanting it to be a little bit more flexible. The downside is stuff like line weight, where when you are resizing and moving stuff around all the time, it becomes kind of tricky to make sure that your images are all going to have the same weight to them. But in Manga Studio, there's this outline selection tool where you can beef up your line width a little bit. Obviously, I wouldn't do it quite that much because it loses some of the detail, and you can kind of play with whether you're drawing outside the line or inside the line, but to just like add a little bit of stroke weight to what's going on if things start to look too thin by comparison. And we'll see how that looks like once I finish inking in here. But
that's an incredibly useful tool.
Yeah, it's kind of like the stroke feature in Illustrator. Not as exact, but like whatever. But yeah, I may even shrink this down a little bit more so that you can get like, I tried to put in this black border so that I could give myself a sense of what's actually going to be lost, but I think that's probably enough boat situation. We shall see. I'm trying to just focus on like getting the rigging and stuff done. And hopefully it will all come together.
So lots of rope for tonight.
Endless amounts of rope. But the beautiful thing is that you can just ink a short section of it. Again, more reasons that cover layout stuff is great in Manga Studio. Is that I just have these little rope bits that I made up of lots of tiny chunks of rope. Like I did one segment of this and then copy pasted it onto itself. And now if I'm like, hey, you know what, needs more rope, I can just take that, copy, paste, move, add, subtract, whatever, and then just like erase the bits of it that I don't need. Et voila, extra rope.
There's not a lot of things where that technique wouldn't be like really obvious, but that's a clever one.
Yeah, rope is one of them. I've been researching and actually found out that there's an Illustrator brush you can get where you draw a path and then you're like, hey, make this rope, Illustrator, and it will make it into rope, which is pretty magic. I'm into that. But yeah, I don't have Illustrator, and I'm doing this mostly in Manga Studio because I like Manga Studio, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. But yeah.
Huh.
And I just need to get it done. There's a lot of like, oh my god, it's going to be the cover of your book. Holy shit, holy shit. And it's fine, you know? It's going to be the cover. It has my name on it. It has my face on it. Like, people are going to buy the book if they're going to buy the book. And I realize that nothing is going to be perfect the way that I want it to be. So I'm just trying to get it done at this point because the campaign goes up in a couple weeks, and it's definitely high time to have everything put together so that I can start sending out press packets and stuff for folks. One thing that is kind of shitty is that screen sharing seems to make Manga Studio laggy with Hangouts. I've noticed this also with like streaming audio, is that it will screw with my not frame rate, but like there's a little bit of lag happening on my brush right now, and I realize I've noticed this in other people's work when I've been watching them do stuff on Hangouts, so that makes it a little bit non-sustainable for doing like longer continuous strokes.
Well, shall I shove off so you can toggle that feature?
No, this is fine. I mean, whoever else is, you might be the only person who's actually watching this. But I forgot to open. Oh no, not that. Not that either. I wonder if people can be viewing and not group chatting at the same time. Who's to say? This is actually, it's good that you're here. It's much better to have another human to talk to.
I might also just have older software.
Yeah, that's possible. But I think it's having like a live, a streaming feed running in another window or like another part of the browser makes Manga Studio a little bit wibbly, because it's rather video intensive. I think I've heard from people that it's quite taxing on your video card, but it's also a great program. Have you played with it at all?
Haven't had a chance yet. When I get past the project I'm working on now and get to working on the book I'm going to be doing with my girlfriend, I think I'm just going to replace. I actually have a a copy of Photoshop CS2.
Yeah.
And I will be replacing that with Manga Studio.
Okay, yeah. I think you're really going to like it. It's definitely changed my life. And it's way better now than it was when I started using it, when it was still version 4, which was like it's kind of like Spanish and Portuguese, you know? It was just close enough to the Photoshop layout to be really confusing in the ways that it was not at all like the Photoshop layout. So you would kind of expect it to be one way because you're like, oh yeah, this looks kind of like Photoshop. I know Photoshop, you know, Adobe products all basically have the same kind of internal logic to them. And then you would find out that no, it's not the case at all.
Yeah, I'm fascinated seeing how your screen actually works.
Yeah. And I was lucky when I started using it. Colleen Coover here at the studio was kind of mentoring me through what her process is like for working in it. And I learned a lot from her. And with the release of whatever they're on now, 5 EX is what I'm using. And basically the difference between those is there's 5, which is, I think, doesn't have story mode, which is not relevant right now because I'm just doing a single image, but it's basically like Manga Studio has a feature which is like InDesign meets Photoshop in one program. So you can do, in story mode, you can see all the pages of a comic. Like if you're doing an 8-page comic, you will have a story file that will keep all of those in one place together. And then you can toggle through them and move them around and like decide that you want them to look different than they do. And I really, really love having that because I like thinking in terms of overall story layout. And it's always fun to be able to look at that. So I would recommend springing for EX. It's also just like comparatively way more cost effective, I want to say. I haven't actually looked into how the Creative Cloud pricing works, and I know Adobe has switched to doing that for all of their products. But back when it was like $600 to buy a copy of Photoshop, if not more, it just makes a heck of a lot more sense to buy Manga Studio for, you know, you get it on sale and it can be like, I don't know, $200. And
yeah,
it's not the cheapest thing in the world, but
yeah. For a month for $60. And that happens about once a year, I've noticed.
Yeah, totally. Those sales are dependable like clockwork. And it's totally worth it, in my opinion. I also just never had a ton of like aptitude for digital stuff. I didn't put in a lot of time with it when I was developing as an artist, and so I just didn't have that skill set to pull from. And it meant that inking in Photoshop always felt really clunky, and the brushes that are available in Manga Studio are way more naturalistic feeling. Friendin does brushes for Manga Studio as well, which are really useful. I have enjoyed using a lot, and yeah, it's a lot easier for me to make that switch. Like a lot of the comics I was doing for the Nib, because they've been on tight turnarounds, have been all digital, and I've done a lot of commission work recently with it. And I just like it a lot.
Oh, speaking of Friendin, was he able to help you out with the issue you were having?
You know, the fella who got back to me on Twitter said that he had just received an update for, what the fuck layer is this on? Sorry. This is the problem with the copying and pasting, is that you start to lose track of where all your various rope bits are. There it is. So somebody said that they had received an upgrade, or like the latest software update from Manga Studio that was about to be rolled out for general users, and it had addressed another issue he'd run into where if you were in your top monitor and wanted to be working down on your screen, if you wanted to erase something down on your screen, it was like a very specific problem, and you tried to do so, your stylus would stop responding entirely, and then you would have to reboot your computer in order like to get it to work.
Oh dear.
Which seems insane, right? So that's obviously a thing that I'm sure they were like, we should fix this sooner rather than later. But yeah, he said, you know, this might be a related issue. Somebody else chimed in and said that they'd had similar problems with Flash. So it might not be Manga Studio, it may be the Mac OS that's having a hard time registering that there's a keyboard when you've been switching from, because it's something to do with switching from like your top monitor down to your Cintiq, and like if I click into a program up there and then click back to my Cintiq and try to use keyboard shortcuts, suddenly it'll be like, whoa, you don't have a keyboard. And it's just really infuriating because, you know, that's kind of all I use is keyboard shortcuts, and it's one of those things that I don't know how dependent I am on it until I'm sitting here frantically smashing my spacebar with my fingers, and nothing is happening. I'm like, why won't you let me just drag this? Which is crazy because, you know, before I came to Periscope, I was a really crap software power user, so I was not doing any kind of shortcut stuff, and life is better now.
Yeah, starting with my experience with Erica being there, it seems like they do a really good job of making sure that people know a lot of the little tricks that make life easier that aren't necessarily taught in schools or are obvious.
For sure. Yeah, and that's like that goes for business acumen, that goes for, a bunch of other stuff. Um, which is cool. I'm realizing that some of these are a little bit more angled than they should be, but whatever. So what's the project that you're working on right now?
A friend of mine is creating a educational television show pilot. Oh, just a moment. I have an alarm going off. Sorry about that.
It's cool. Oh, look, it's Charlie. Charlie, you just texted me.
Um, yeah, he's creating a television pilot for an educational children's show starring his pet ferret.
I,
And it's
okay.
going to be kind of a wishbone type thing, but her interior fantasies and monologue are going to be represented in like illustrations that pop on screen and move to an extent, but nothing like animation. It's more like a Ken Burns effect, maybe with occasional moving pieces, but
Okay.
most illustrations. So since I'm the illustrator person he happened to know, I'm the person doing that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's kind of how it works, isn't it? Like I've had a rash of messages from friends recently being like, "Hey, so you're the illustrator I know. Do you want to do this kid's book?" And more often than not, it's like, "No, I'm really sorry, but I don't."
Yeah.
And I've done my time with kids' books, and like, it's just not what I'm doing. But of course, the flip side about that, the nice thing is that I do have a lot of friends who are, up and coming illustrators or starting to look for freelance work, and it's always a boon to be able to say, I can't help you, but you know who can. That's honestly been another big boon of working at the studio is like people who are too busy being successful at their own gig to take on work will be more than happy to pass stuff off to their studio mates, because we're people that they've worked with and they know that we can get the job done. So you can pass a job off to somebody with confidence. And a lot of the freelance work that I've gotten in the last year has really just been like direct referrals from studio mates who are too busy to take stuff on, because a lot of us work similarly enough. I feel like in the sort of Erica Dillon me corner of the room, like we can all deal with kind of similar stylistic material.
Yeah, I see what you
Yeah.
mean. There's definitely like,
There's some crossover there.
yeah. I'm not even sure I'd go as far as to say a shared aesthetic, but definitely like if someone were to group a bunch of comics, you would not be in the like Neil Adams section of the room or
Yeah,
Kramer's Ergot section of the room.
for sure. This is confusing that people, I'm looking over in the group chat window to see that people are like coming and leaving, and I wonder if there's a way to tell them that they don't have to be on video. I think people come in and they end up on video the way you are, like live casting, and then they're like, "Oh God, I don't want." And that's not what we want. But there's like not a good. That's the question and answer window, not the group chat window. Okay, as guests join, hide their audio and video from my broadcast. But I think if I click that, then I won't be able to talk to you anymore, and that's not what I want. F it. You're the only person watching this, so I'm just going to leave it for now, and then other people can tune in later, and they will just listen to us talking about ferrets. Because who doesn't love ferrets?
A lot of ferrets. And it was a really good job for the time. It had been so long since I'd drawn that I wasn't dependably fast enough to take on freelance work because I just straight up couldn't guarantee that I would get it done. And that's sort of a key factor.
Yep.
So in his case, he was like, I know I need to make this, but I'm kind of making it piecemeal in my free time, and you can illustrate it piecemeal as you go. And
yeah,
awesome, that'll fit in with the landscaping gig perfectly.
right. Much easier. That's cool. So you're doing like a bunch of, did you say they're going to be like illustrations that are going to be kind of Ken Burns over, or?
Yeah, actually,
Okay. They're not like comic pages, but.
I can later on email you a clip that he's put on YouTube that's sort of, it's like a rough cut that has them edited in and shows how it works.
I dig that. I did some work for a documentary filmmaker friend last year. I guess that was still into this year, where she wanted some illustrated content for her documentary that she then hired my friend Vince Mascoli to sort of animate. So like he went into After Effects and basically took some of the clips and then was like, okay, so now this person's hand is going to move so they can like wave as if it's an animated piece, and then it's also Ken Burnsing. So it's kind of like that thing that people do with animated book trailers a lot of the time, I think. You often see similar kind of, or like motion comics.
And in fact, some of the illustrations I've created have been created specifically to look good while being panned over and closed in on and zoomed out on.
Yeah, which is a totally specific thing.
Just be static illustrations.
Yeah. I think there's some stuff you don't think about when you're drawing, and then somebody's like, so we need to make this move, and you're like, oh shit, that's not going to go well. This is not structured to move.
Get out ahead of Rob in terms of like how he was going to use these drawings.
Yeah, that's
and like just take some of that right out of his hands. Be like, here's how this is going to fit in.
This is the part where I get to be super nerdy and go through and name all my layers after the actual characteristics.
Why not? It would help organize, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to know where everything is now.
Ropey thing 1, ropey thing 2. And I know knots pretty well, but I don't know rigging well, so a lot of this is rope gibberish to me.
Yeah, we do tutorials for the interns who come and work with us at Periscope, and I was talking with Layla Del Duca about doing like what tutorials we would have her do, because she inks with a brush, analog still, and I really love her inking, and I was wondering if she was going to be willing to do some kind of because it's just fun to like, you know, check out people's process. But she came in and then was like, what if you did a boat tutorial for our interns? And I was like, that's not really a comic skill. And she was like, no, but it is, because, you know, people end up having to draw boats, and it's difficult because they have no idea what they're doing. And I mean, honestly, when people ask me for advice, I'm mostly like, there's only a couple of things that I look for to be like, oh, this person obviously knows about boats, or oh, this person obviously doesn't know anything about boats.
Yes.
And there's some super obvious mistakes you can make, but it's also not gonna like make or break you if every single line is not in place. Because frankly, if you drew every single line, you wouldn't be able to tell what on earth was going on. Okay, so now what is happening right now is I am hitting E, and it is not keyboard shortcutting. So for whatever reason, that terrible glitch is in effect at this time, and my dumb thing is not gonna work. So normally what happens is I'll like click up into my monitor, come back down, and then my keyboard shortcuts will work again. So like now they're working, I'm toggling through stuff. But sometimes if it's being particularly ornery, it'll work for 2 seconds and then snap back to not functioning. So it'll take me back to whatever tool I wasn't using before and just leave it there. And it's just such a jerk. I really don't like it. And I don't know what causes it, you know? That's what's infuriating. Anyway, gripe.
Well, I hope it gets fixed on the new update. How long has this been going on?
Oh, Lord, a while. But also with Manga Studio, I think they don't push updates automatically, so it may be that I have not checked for a minute here, and the update's been out for a second, and I haven't actually downloaded it yet. So I should look into that. Users of Manga Studio, remember to check for updates regularly, because sometimes they come out and you don't notice, and then you find out that things have been bad. Another thing I really love about working with it is that you can draw without any, like your brushes can be as aliased or anti-aliased as you want them to be, which is great if you're going to be doing any flatting. And like I can show you how flatting is the best in Manga Studio. So like if you have your person up here, let's say, and I set that as my lighthouse layer, my guide layer, and whatever I'm working on underneath that, if I put on my paint bucket and talk about multiple reference points, it will, here, I can make this a little bit wider. So there's the thing that says multiple referring. Manga Studio is sometimes poorly translated from Japanese, so you get some weird stuff in here that, you know, doesn't quite look like proper English. But if you have multiple referring, which basically means if you're going to refer to multiple layers, and you click the little lighthouse, anything you paint bucket in your lower layer is going to show up in that top layer. So if I, oops, and I don't have close gap turned on. So close gap is, I love close gap. Close gap is great. Normally, I am a kind of open lines sort of girl. And if you were doing this in Photoshop, it would try and fill your entire canvas.
Right, you'd have to have had it flatted first.
Right. And the other thing you're doing when you are flatting is making sure that you've trapped all your artwork. And there's a thing in Manga Studio called area scaling, which I can drop this down to transparent so you can see how this works. But you can set your area scaling and it will just straight up trap for you. Am I blowing your mind right now? So yeah, it takes that whole step out of the process. And there's a bunch of other really cool features in here, like one called close and fill, which you can drag your, oops, I'm not very good at this one. I don't use it very often. You can drag your brush around an area and it will fill everything that is a closed shape in that space, which is really useful for, let me see if I can do this for, there's a convenient bit of, okay, so here, like let's say we set this as our reference layer. And instead of taking the paint bucket and going through all of these, I can just loop around it and it will just fill the shrouds.
Holy crap.
I know, it's magic. I love it. So yeah, that's why I love coloring in Manga Studio. I don't like digital coloring.
Out of prepping an illustration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's great. I'm really excited about being able to use that when coloring. And I mean, I didn't do a lot of digital color beforehand, but still.
For me, it's like if I'm the guy who's been hand cutting all of his color separations,
mm-hmm.
You know, like you have to X-Acto cut all of the color separations.
Yeah.
And then you're like, hey, there's this thing called Photoshop now. You don't have to.
You're like, what the what? So
yeah,
again,
exactly.
like I realized that I just realized that there's a bit of rigging down here which needs to be visible behind the shrouds. And look, just copy and paste that fool and stick it in there. And then go marquee in here and select everything else and delete it. And I've done that. It's no skin off my rosy nose. Actually, that's a lot of work for not a very large section of stuff that needs filling, but still. Check my meaning, right? It's like super.
I had been wondering when you were going to fill it in, actually.
This is the other good thing about having people on your live stream is being like, hey, am I missing anything? Tell me, detail-oriented friends. How would you make this better? Okay, so this is basically functional, I think. Or, you know, good enough at least. Oops, I did not fully erase that, and then I flattened that layer. Heavens to Betsy. Boop, boop, boop. Okay, so then we get rid of that, and we've got some rigging. It's all very exciting.
Does that pulleys rigging also extend below?
Does which?
The rigging coming off the wooden block there.
Oh, off the block? No, it does. Thank God you're here.
I realized you're probably like trail work people. You probably call those blocks and not pulleys, which is the colloquial term.
Mm-hmm. What am I looking for? This guy. Oh.
I had to switch back after I started landscaping as opposed to doing trail work because we never call something a pickaxe. It's a pickmatic. You'll never say sledgehammer because sledgehammer doesn't connote whether it can hit metal or whether it can hit stone, and that's a really important distinction.
Oh, interesting. I would not. Yeah, it's funny the different things that become relevant in those professions. I mean, there's sailing stuff. It's like, yeah, relevant to certain professions, not relevant in other places. But yeah, for stuff like this where it's just, I don't know, I've inked a lot of comics about this subject matter by hand, and even just doing the penciling goes a long way, but coming in and filling in all the rope. I was saying when I was doing the Periscope stream the other night, because I was working on this Carrick mat, which is just, endless loops of knotwork. And it's a little silly to try and do that. And it also just, there's a point where it becomes visually noisy, I guess, is the trouble too, is like how much, especially for a book cover where you want things to be like bold and graphic. It's hard to determine how best to make things look.
You've got a very Lena Claire style too.
Right, yeah, I'm not doing a lot of impressionistic rope work.
If someone had more of a painterly inking style, they could get away with allowing the detail to kind of fade out here and there.
Mm-hmm, totally.
But that would not be a good option for your work.
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's something that I have tried to do differently. Ooh, that's not black anymore. It's something I've played with wanting to do differently, and I feel like people will probably see this in the last issue of the comic that I'm including in the collection, the one about scurvy, which I've been working on inking by hand. That's like all printed out, and I'm working on it that way. And in that, and in lots of the comics that I've been doing recently, actually, I'm playing with trying to be more expressive and loose. That generally plays out as more cartoony rather than more painterly, I would say. Like, painterly is not the word I would use. But I do notice that, like, in my attempts to get that really clean line style, I do end up, I don't know, losing some of the liveliness in my lines. So I've been making a concerted effort to try and change that recently. Also,
I do like the funky sailor pants.
What's that?
I do like the funky sailor pants. Back when I had more cash, I was seriously considering getting a pair like that from Old Town, and there's a company in England that makes rather nice reproduction pants of that nature.
Yeah, that shit does not come cheap.
No, not at all.
You're like, oh, well, it's just like getting bespoke clothing, really. Ends up being super costly. But it is really cool. I went to the Oregon Country Fair for the first time this weekend, and it brought me back to days of going to Renaissance festivals, and I had strong positive feelings about getting outfitted with all of that stuff. But it is pricey. You need to like work in tech and do it as a fun weekend pastime to have the budget to just like drop hundreds of dollars on corsetry all the time.
I don't suppose you could write it off as a business expense.
Now I might be able to. I feel like probably when I was in high school wouldn't have been as feasible.
No.
Now.
That's tax deductible now.
Yeah, fucking everything is tax deductible now. It's great. See, I was trying to do some cunning thing here where my feet were both going to be behind the and I don't know if that's going to work.
At least show one foot.
More to do with like having it in a location where the where it's going to make sense. This is actually like, I don't know, the perspective is a little twonky here, because it was twonky when I originally drew this drawing, and I'm running into that terrible issue of like, oh, because it's an existing drawing, like I don't want to change it too much.
Well, what are you actually? I'm looking at the drawing, trying to figure out. Are your feet in the rope ladder that you are hanging on to?
There will be one foot. So my right foot is going to be on the ratlins, which are the little rope laddery bit. And then the other one would be on the foot rope, which is the line that hangs behind the, whoops, that hangs behind the sail, which is where you would stand if you were working on furling. So like this leg would be, just draw this in blue.
So
if there were a rope laddery bit right here, there would be 1 foot here, and then this foot would be down here. And basically the ratlins are like, or the foot ropes are these big black ropes that hang down behind the sail. Are a little bit lower than that. But it's kind of a question of whether this foot is going to be visible all the way out. And this, again, is the nice thing about Manga Studio, is you can get in here and be like, okay, hang on a minute, let's just figure out what the fuck is going on with the geometries.
Yeah, something on that right thigh is off.
This one or her right?
Yeah, I'm talking about as if it's her body that she's experiencing. Her.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, this I think is curved too far up, honestly. Which it's one of those things where sometimes you just have to like take it out, because otherwise I find that my brain gets too distracted being like, but the line is there, so it must be right. And there's a certain point where you have to be like, you know what? I don't think this is right. And I'm just going to take it out. This is the part where live streaming is really terrible and self-conscious making, because you're like, hey, everybody.
Sorry.
I'm not a real cartoonist. No, I mean, this is just like the feeling, right, that everybody deals with all the time, of being an imposter.
Well, I've never, I don't think I ever would have dreamed of I didn't know if live streaming drawing was a thing when I was still doing it professionally.
Yeah. I see a lot of friends do it. Like I have a lot of friends who work digitally a lot, who will live stream on the regular. And I think it's a really neat way to do it, to show people what you're up to. But I'm also, because I'm working in the studio a lot of the time, I'm already talking to people here. And so it seems it's a bit odd to be the person like yakking away to your own computer monitor when you've got a room full of other humans to hang out with and talk to. Yeah, what is going weird here? Because I also want to be seeing... This is a fun thing too, is just being able to like, whoop. That angle is a little bit closer.
I guess both of the legs would be farther down, because where you have the hip joint right now is placed on her torso where the iliac crest would be.
Yeah, you're right. So it would really be more like there.
Yeah.
What's that knee joint that's going to be?
Is roughly where the top of the pelvis is, the two crests.
Mm-hmm.
And then there'd be the two hip joints. Yeah. There you go.
That's way better. So
doing oh, sorry, I'm hitting the point of the night. I've had Lyme disease the last couple of months, and it's affecting my ability to recall words.
Oh Christ, that's terrible.
Yeah, I'm like
nuts.
Let's see. Okay, yes. I've been teaching art lessons to my little cousin recently, and I've actually managed to convey more anatomy to her than a lot of college students come out like professionally illustrating knowing.
Nice.
And so I've really been like rejiggering and reconsidering some of my anatomy lessons to make them as simple and comprehensible to a layman as possible.
Oh, that's rad.
So like, yeah, a lot of these joint structures are just something I've been thinking a lot about.
Yeah.
I didn't take it seriously in college.
Really?
It didn't matter. I was always able to fudge it well enough, and my figure drawing looked good enough that I didn't notice that I didn't understand these things. And then I was working on that second book that just tanked, but I had to draw a character that was like 400 feet tall, and in perspective, and he's naked, like, you can't, there's nothing to hide anything.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, oh, I don't actually understand any of this.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
I thought I did, but then when it came time to put those structures into perspective and rotate them around, all my little tricks that I'd been relying on didn't work anymore.
Yeah, that's God. I worry that about myself, that, because I don't have that kind of like formal anatomical training. I was talking to a friend of mine who did some time at SCAD recently, and we were just comparing notes on like the kinds of classes that we took, as undergrads, and like what was useful and what wasn't. And I wanted to go to art school and then decided to go to Reed in Portland instead, because I really liked liberal arts stuff, and I didn't want to get stuck in a general ed like required class that people didn't want to attend. And I was like, well, I'll get a liberal arts degree, and then like if I really want to do art, I'll go to art school afterwards or something. And the fact of the matter was that I ended up getting an art degree anyway from the liberal arts school, because it was like just, I couldn't stay away. Like I ended up really missing doing art and not allowing myself to do it until I'd finished my homework, like it was some kind of reward.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'll trick myself into doing more art by taking an art class. And then they won't be able to prevent me from doing drawing, or rather my brain will not be able to prevent me from doing drawing.
Decision. I did go to like one of the pricier art schools, and I got some things out of it, but I see, it's hard to say in hindsight. If knowing what I know now, I could assemble those resources for much less money for someone else, but I don't know that I could have assembled those on my own
I
at the
think for a lot
time.
of friends that I talk to, yeah, it's not necessarily that art school is like, oh, they taught me things that I wouldn't have learned anywhere else. It's like they presented those things to me in a way that was accessible.
And I had comrades. Like that
Yeah, totally.
was the thing too. So I don't regret it, but that's a big part of why I want to go back another pass on the anatomy lessons, because I evolved the anatomy lessons for Comic Tools specifically because there's no in between in art books where it's like, here's some basic shapes that don't tell you how to draw a body except a really rough version.
Yeah,
Now learn how to put all the muscles and bones in it.
right.
And there's no in between. It's like, here's all the muscles and bones. The basic shapes that are taught in almost every book I've ever read, the only exception being Andrew Loomis's anatomy books from the 50s,
Bless him.
they all, you can't hang anatomy off them. You can't scale them. You can't adjust their proportions if you're drawing a dwarf or a giant or an ape or a cartoon character.
Mm-hmm.
They're essentially useless to cartoonists.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I feel like I've gushed about this before, but like Comic Tools was an insane resource for me when I was getting started, because there wasn't really anyone else that I could find who was discussing the nitty gritty of like craft in that way.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of good stuff out of that blog. I am looking at my Japanese NT box cutter that I bought based on that recommendation from your blog.
Excellent.
Which
I still have mine.
Yeah, being a kid who was into bookbinding in school, like, oh fuck, that was the best. Saved my life. I cut through so much
Special
coverboard with that
blades that
thing.
last longer.
What's that?
You can get the special blades for it too, made with the blue steel. They last longer.
Oh, this one, I mean, like, I was totally satisfied with the way this one came. I don't do a ton of cutting, so it's like it works out to not having to change them out so often.
Awesome.
But yeah, I fucking love that knife.
That's good though. And like honestly, a lot of the stuff I put in Comic Tools, I put in there because there was no art school that taught a lot of that stuff. There was no resource for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wouldn't matter a bit if someone went to RISD or SVA or something. They still wouldn't have had access to those things.
Yeah, for sure. Because there were lots of things that I was like, oh, when I got older, I was like, if I'd gone to art school, I would have had this. And then I got out and started talking to people who had gone to SCAD or gone to wherever, and they were like, oh no, I didn't get that. I thought
Yeah.
you were getting that at liberal arts school. And I'm like, no, I didn't get a liberal arts school. Like, we're all comparing notes and like nobody's actually getting the thing that they set out to get from their education.
Well, and then, God bless Periscope, and I think Periscope especially, more than any studio I'm aware of in the country, for promoting people like Katie Lane, talking about contracts, talking about business acumen,
Oh
because
yeah.
they don't teach cartoonist business classes, and especially for what's supposed to be trade schooling, that's insane.
Right. And especially for something, I was just talking to a friend today who's a circus performer, he's an acrobat, and we were talking about like how do you put that on your resume in a way that makes people understand that you're a small business owner, and uh, as a cartoonist, you've either gained those skills dealing with yourself as a business person, or you really haven't, and then things can get ugly. But if you're doing it moderately successfully, and at some point down the road you have to get a day job, like it's hard to
I have noticed
express.
that, being someone who's had the day job for the last, several years now.
Yeah, it's like how do you tell folks that that's what you're doing? Okay, something is really wrong here. It's this knee joint. Something looks weird here. What is it? This is the other thing I loathe about digital drawing, is that you can change it so many times. It's like, oh, well, it looks right, but maybe it doesn't look right, and maybe I need to make it look different. Oh, I can just undo it and I can redo it, and like, we could be here all night. But
It's also somehow harder for me to make a decisive gestural mark.
yeah, for sure.
Like, there's people who can do it. I look at digital painters like Kazu,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
who can just he can make a commanding digital mark and I don't know how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I can do it sometimes when I'm not. That's the reason that I was starting to do these cover design elements. Like I was inking them by hand, and I was hoping that I wouldn't have to do too much of this after the fact, because I am way better at doing it for stuff that it's like, oh, this is just a quick piece that's gonna like go up online and make people laugh, and it's a lot easier for me to let go in that scenario and be like, yeah, just it's gonna be the way it's gonna be, whatever. But because this is like the cover of my book, I'm getting unnecessarily anal about making sure that everything is right, which is precisely the thing that stops the line from having that kind of lively quality, which one would want out of one's work in that context. But the fact of the matter is that once there's color on it and once it's on the shelf, like, it doesn't matter. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. A mantra for myself for the next like month and a half. So, okay.
So who is your liaison at Kickstarter right now?
Like my point person who I'm talking to.
Yes, I forgot the exact term they use for them.
Well, there is a general like comics account run by Jamie Tanner. Is that his name? I believe. I just met him when I went to check out the Kickstarter offices when I was in New York, and he was immensely kind and helpful. And we met Craig Engler, who also works there. He, I think, is not in the comics division anymore, but was when he came to visit Periscope. And he writes a zombie television show for Sci-Fi. But he was the one who hit me up and said, "Hey, do you want to come and check out the offices while you're in New York?" And it was really neat to go in and check everything out. But more than that, there is a Comics at Kickstarter account, which is where Jamie gets his email. And if you write to them and you have a project in process, you can just be like, hey, Kickstarter, would you take a look at, you know, what I'm working on right now? And they are, I'm really impressed with how they have amped up their support system for creators who are working on projects, because now there's all kinds of resources for how to make your project the best it can be. And they're really gung-ho about getting in touch with people ahead of time and like walking them through, you know, how to make more compelling reward tiers or a bunch of stuff like that. And they there's an open invitation from them to, you know, write and learn about that stuff. And that's not just for me. That, I mean, I think that's for touch and get some advice. So I love that that exists. And people can just check it out and see what works best for them.
Aha! That's nice. That really brought her right into the space.
Yeah, I think this is infinitely better than it was before. This is how it works.
Yeah, it's starting to look like a finished Lucy Bellwood drawn.
I know, right? It's all coming together. Whoops, she's in 2 halves, though.
Oh, dear. Who's the magician?
Yeah, who's got the saw in the box?
Yes.
Ugh, it's just all of this. Oh, okay. So let's make a hand that's holding something. Blah, blah. One thing that's unfortunate, so your lines, you know, you can draw into Alias, you can see like how clean those are. That's just your standard brush setting. If you transform anything though, it will remove that. So if you've done a bunch of like transforming to shift your artwork around and make it look right in the space, it's good to remember to go in and threshold it afterwards, just to keep everything.
Oh, yes, because it'll have interpolated some of those as gray.
Yeah, and when it shifts, that's what happens, and I realize it actually. Okay, so that is definitely underneath. That's definitely underneath.
Wow, I've never seen Manga Studio used, and this is so much more efficient.
Yeah.
I can't believe how Stone Age I feel right now.
It's pretty magical. I mean, like I see Steve demoing it for, you know, people who are coming in to visit the studio who have been like hand drawing brickwork textures, or I don't know. There's just a bunch of stuff that it's really, really good for, and you can get a lot out of it. I'm actually going to go ahead and threshold this right now, because, and you know, there's some stuff like that which has really different names, and that made it look messy. So we're gonna go in and fix it. It's funny, that makes me realize just how much of it was blurred out. Okay, so this is like, so again, instead of like image adjustment, now you've got tonal correction, and instead of threshold, you have binarization. Like you kind of have to, I don't know,
that makes sense
change the way you think.
Yeah.
Oh, whoops, I was
the Englishy version of those things.
Right, yeah. There's a couple that used to be really spectacularly bad, but every version that they bring out is improved. There we go. Okay. I'm worried that this is gonna look a little bit too intense when I get it all put together, but we'll find out.
It's a nice touch having the Life at Sea writing be nautical tattoo style.
Yeah, yeah. That was Allison found a really great font that I have one that I've been using for a long time called the Bay, which was a, you know, free use font that I got from somewhere, which is old tattoo-y style, and I used that as my guide for a lot of the lettering that I was doing on the early Baggywrinkles issues, and it's got not a ton of character to it, but you know, it gets the job done in terms of like teaching me the basics of how to do that kind of tattoo lettering. And she came back with this other one, which is also called, I don't know, Sailor Tattoo or something, which this is basically, it's based on that font and then adapted to be a little bit more flexible. Like there were no cases in the original, so I just did some creative font adjusting and lettered over it. And again, like for lettering,
hand lettered.
yeah, for lettering, it's also super good because I'm a stickler for hand lettering and I love doing it. But there's also like, you know, ruling things out with a names guide takes a lot of time, and things about comics that are there. It's a game of efficiency as much as it is a game of draftsmanship, you know, and there's a lot to do with just being the fastest at what you do. And I see a lot of people in Periscope who really like pull out all the stops in terms of being ruthlessly efficient when it comes to art making. Steve is great at this. Like he, you know, has pre-made brickwork textures and snow spatters and whatever that he can just drop onto stuff. And it's somebody's going to look at that panel for, you know, a fraction of a second. And there's no sense in beating yourself to death trying to make every single mark look perfect if it's not going to be visible to the reader. So I've learned a lot from that approach of, you know, leave your perfectionism at the door and see what you can do with what you have. Just moving this jackstick because I think it looks a little sloppy. Okay. Ooh, I have not hit save the entire time that I've been sitting here on the word. Jesus God. You'd think after I lost everything, now we're gonna watch my scrolling pinwheel of death cursor for a second here and hope that it doesn't just crash. Hey guys, tune into Google Hangouts and watch me cry while I lose all of my work. All right. Cool. I think that is some line art for a cover.
Beautiful.
Yay. I'm really glad you showed up, Matt. Now I have somebody to talk to. The next time I do this, I will know to actually schedule somebody to come and talk to me because that's the way to do it. And this, we're just going to find a good way to
way to do an interview.
Yeah, totally. If you have someone talking. And this looks good. I think there's going to be a way to put this in here where it's not going to look totally perplexing, having a scroll on top of everything. And I'm sure color is going to do a lot for that too once it's done. Yeah, that's about right. You can see in the original rough that we were putting together, there's like this sort of fisheye lens effect for the ocean down at the horizon. And I was fucking around with trying to figure out where to put that in, because obviously it's not going to be in proper perspective, but it just gives a little bit more of a sense of space. And Allie did this really nice. She dropped oh, you can't see it because it's hidden behind the name scroll now, but she basically just went through all my comics and found elements that she liked and then, you know, screen grabbed them and copy pasted them into the layout and was like, what about something like this? And I was looking at it like, God, you did a really great job drawing all that stuff. And then realized that she had just been stealing from previous comics that I had drawn, but had done it in, you know, pretty seamless back to check out what it would look like if we added, you know, a second mast back here or other stuff. And she grabbed a little whale that I'd drawn in the background of one of the comics and dropped it in down in the ocean, which I thought looked really cute. So I'm going to try and find a way to get that in here.
It looks like from your figure, the horizon line would be roughly around her chest or neck level.
Yeah, in Allie's mock-up, it was close to her elbow originally.
Looking down onto the mast, or not the mast, whatever the cross piece is called.
The yard. Come learn about nautical terminology with Lucy Bellwood, kids.
I like it.
Yeah, and I don't know if it would even be that dramatic. Maybe something more like that. So yeah, it's just going to be a question of adding some little ocean streaks there and drawing the whale in. And Then slapping some color on this thing. I have exciting color announcements to make about the book that I'm not going to spill the beans on Hangouts because I'm waiting until the campaign goes live. But I may not be the person coloring the cover. We will find out because color is not my strong suit. I like doing it. I have fun doing it. But yeah, and you can see like once the color is in place too, that banner is going to pop way better. Anyway, I'm going to save that and call it a night.
Great. Well, have a good night.
Thanks for hanging out, Matt. You guys have been talking to me, Lucy Bellwood, and also Matt Bernier, who decided to stop in. Am I pronouncing your last name right?
For everywhere but Maine, yes.
People say that.
It's Bernier, Lafreniere, Lapellier.
Yeah, I dated a Lapellier.
Yeah, they do a funny thing to the R's here.
Interesting. Well, cool. Thanks for watching, people who came to watch, and hello, people who listened to this / watched it later, which you can do because Hangouts. And I'm going to press the stop button now.
Ta.
All right, bye, friends.